Hollywood promised Bruce Lee the world, then snatched it away the moment he became too powerful. They watched him revolutionize martial arts on American screens, break box office records, and challenge every stereotype they had carefully constructed about Asian men. But when Lee demanded equal pay, creative control, and respect, the industry that claimed to celebrate diversity showed its true colors. What they did next wasn't just rejection, it was systematic destruction. And the evidence they tried to bury tells a story far darker than anyone imagined. In 1966, Bruce Lee walked into the offices of 20th Century Fox with something Hollywood had never seen before. He didn't just pitch a TV show, he delivered a complete vision for the Green Hornet, reimagining the sidekick character Kato as a martial arts master who would steal every scene. The executives watched his demonstration, seeing him move with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. They were impressed, but not in the way Lee hoped. They saw dollar signs, but they also saw a threat. Lee landed the role, but the contract he signed contained clauses that would haunt him for years. He earned $400 per episode, while the white lead, Van Williams, took home $2,000. The studio justified this by claiming Williams was the star. But behind closed doors, they knew the truth. Audience test screenings revealed that viewers couldn't stop talking about Kato. Fan mail flooded in, almost all of it addressed to Lee. The Green Hornet wasn't Williams' show anymore. It belonged to the Asian sidekick, and that terrified the executives. The show premiered in September 1966 and ran for one season, 26 episodes that showcased Lee's incredible abilities, but also revealed Hollywood's limitations. Lee wasn't allowed to speak much. His dialogue was minimal, often just a few words per episode. The writers claimed this fit Kato's character, but Lee knew better. They were keeping him quiet because a confident, articulate Asian man challenged the subservient stereotypes that American audiences expected. Behind the scenes, things got worse. Lee suggested fight choreography that would make the action sequences revolutionary. The producers rejected most of his ideas, claiming they were too violent or too complicated. What they really meant was that they didn't want an Asian actor telling white directors how to do their jobs. Lee swallowed his frustration and performed brilliantly anyway, but the experience left him bitter. When The Green Hornet was cancelled in March 1967, Lee believed bigger opportunities would follow. His agent assured him that Hollywood was paying attention. Casting directors had seen what he could do, but the calls Lee expected never came. Instead, he watched as television shows and movies that could have featured him went to white actors. Kung Fu, the show that would make this betrayal legendary, was still years away, but the pattern was already forming. Lee refused to give up. He opened a martial arts school in Los Angeles, teaching students who included Steve McQueen, James Coburn, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. These weren't just clients, they became friends, and some of them would later try to help Lee break through Hollywood's barriers. But even their influence had limits in an industry that preferred Asian actors in the background, never in the spotlight. In 1969, Lee got a call that seemed like the break he'd been waiting for. Paramount was developing a new television series about a Shaolin monk wandering the American West. The role required someone with genuine martial arts expertise, philosophical depth, and screen presence. Lee had spent months developing the concept with producer Fred Weintraub. He'd written treatments, created the character's backstory, and envisioned how the show would blend Eastern philosophy with Western storytelling. This wasn't just another audition. This was his creation. Lee met with Warner Brothers executives to discuss the lead role in Kung Fu. He demonstrated his skills, explained his vision for the character, and answered their questions about his background and training. The executives nodded, took notes, and told him they'd be in touch. Lee left that meeting believing the role was his. After all, who else could bring this level of authenticity to the character? The answer came weeks later, and it shattered everything Lee had built. Warner Brothers announced they were moving forward with Kung Fu, but the lead role would go to David Carradine, a white actor with no martial arts training. The studio claimed Lee was too authentically Asian for American audiences. They needed someone viewers could relate to, someone who wouldn't make middle America uncomfortable. In other words, they needed a white man to play a Chinese character in a show about Chinese martial arts philosophy. Lee's lawyer sent letters demanding credit for his contributions to the show's development. Warner Brothers responded with legal threats of their own. They claimed Lee had only provided minor consultation and that the show's concept belonged entirely to the studio. This was a lie, and everyone involved knew it. But Lee couldn't afford a prolonged legal battle against a major studio. He had a family to support and a career that Hollywood could destroy with a few phone calls to the right people. The betrayal cut deeper than just losing a role. Kung Fu became a massive hit, running for 3 seasons and turning David Carradine into a star. Critics praised the show's thoughtful approach to Eastern philosophy, apparently unbothered by the fact that a white actor was teaching viewers about Chinese culture. Carradine later admitted he didn't deserve the role and that Lee should have gotten it, but by then, the damage was done. What made this even more infuriating was the excuse Warner Brothers kept repeating. They claimed American audiences wouldn't accept an Asian lead actor, but this explanation didn't hold up under scrutiny. Lee had already proven his appeal on the Green Hornet. His guest appearances on other shows drew higher ratings. His martial arts demonstrations at events across the country attracted thousands of fans. The only people who couldn't accept an Asian lead were the executives making the decisions. The Kung Fu disaster forced Lee to confront an uncomfortable truth. No matter how talented he was, no matter how hard he worked, Hollywood would always see him as a sidekick, a villain, or a stereotype. They would take his ideas, his skills, and his hard work, then hand the credit to someone who looked like them. This realization could have broken him. Instead, it pushed him to make a decision that would change his life. Lee packed his family and moved back to Hong Kong in 1971. If Hollywood wouldn't give him a chance, he'd create opportunities elsewhere. The Hong Kong film industry welcomed him with open arms. Director Raymond Chow offered him the lead role in The Big Boss, a film that would prove everything Hollywood had said about Lee was wrong. The Big Boss hit theaters in Hong Kong in October 1971 and became an instant phenomenon. It broke every box office record in the territory, earning more than any film in Hong Kong history up to that point. Audiences packed theaters for weeks, coming back multiple times to watch Lee's explosive performance. Here was a Chinese actor playing a Chinese hero, speaking his native language, and embodying strength, honor, and masculinity in ways that Hollywood never allowed. Lee followed The Big Boss with Fist of Fury in 1972, and if anything, this film was even more successful. The story hit harder too. Lee played a martial arts student seeking revenge for his master's death, and the film didn't shy away from addressing Chinese resentment toward Japanese occupation and Western imperialism. In one iconic scene, Lee's character destroys a sign that says, "No dogs and Chinese allowed." The symbolism was impossible to miss, and Chinese audiences around the world felt seen in ways they never had before. But it was his third Hong Kong film, Way of the Dragon, that truly showcased what Lee could do with creative freedom. He wrote, directed, produced, and starred in the film, creating the first Chinese martial arts movie made specifically for an international audience. The climactic fight scene in Rome's Colosseum, where Lee faced off against Chuck Norris, became one of the most famous martial arts sequences ever filmed. The success Lee achieved in Hong Kong sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The industry that had rejected him now scrambled to get his attention. Studio executives who wouldn't return his calls suddenly wanted meetings. Producers who claimed audiences wouldn't accept an Asian lead now pitched projects built entirely around him. The hypocrisy was staggering, but Lee was smart enough to recognize opportunity when it knocked, even if it came from people who had wronged him. Warner Brothers, the same studio that gave Kung Fu to David Carradine, came crawling back with a new offer. They wanted to produce a Bruce Lee film with a real budget, American distribution, and the kind of marketing support that could make him a global superstar. The project was called Enter the Dragon, and it would be the first martial arts film produced by a major Hollywood studio for the international market. Lee negotiated hard. He demanded creative input on the script, approval of the fight choreography, and a salary that reflected his value. The studio, desperate to cash in on his Hong Kong success, agreed to most of his terms. Production began in January 1973, with Lee in Hong Kong and the studio in Los Angeles. The film combined Hong Kong action filmmaking with Hollywood production values, creating something neither industry had seen before. But even with a Hollywood deal in place, the racism didn't stop. During production, studio notes kept coming back with suggestions that felt like insults. They wanted Lee to smile more, to be less intense, to soften his character. They suggested adding more white characters to the story so American audiences would have someone to root for. Lee fought these notes at every turn, but the battles exhausted him. The physical demands of Enter the Dragon pushed Lee harder than any previous film. He performed stunts that would have killed less skilled martial artists. He did take after take until the action was perfect. He worked through pain, through exhaustion, Through mounting tension with some of the Hollywood crew members who still treated him like an expendable Asian actor instead of the star and creative force driving the production. On May 10, 1973, Bruce Lee collapsed in the dubbing room at Golden Harvest Studios in Hong Kong. He was working on sound editing for Enter the Dragon when he fell unconscious. Doctors rushed him to the hospital and discovered he had a cerebral edema, swelling in the brain. After treatment, Lee recovered, but doctors couldn't determine what caused the episode. They ran tests, found nothing definitive, and sent him home with warnings to rest. Lee ignored those warnings. He had too much to prove. Too many people depending on him. 2 months later, on July 20th, 1973, Lee went to the apartment of Betty Ting-pei, a Taiwanese actress. They were discussing an upcoming film project with producer Raymond Chow. At some point during the meeting, Lee complained of a headache. Ting-pei gave him Equagesic, a pain medication that combined aspirin with a muscle relaxant. Lee lay down in her bedroom to rest. When Chow returned to the apartment hours later to wake Lee for a dinner meeting, he couldn't rouse him. Lee was dead at 32 years old. The official cause of death was listed as a cerebral edema, the same condition that had hospitalized Lee 2 months earlier. The coroner ruled it was a hypersensitive reaction to the Equagesic medication. But this explanation left more questions than answers. Lee was in peak physical condition. He had never had a known allergy to pain medication. The coincidences seemed too convenient for many people to accept. Conspiracy theories exploded immediately. Some believed the Hong Kong triads had ordered a hit because Lee refused to pay them protection money. Others claimed jealous martial artists had used a delayed action death touch, a legendary technique from martial arts folklore. The most painful theory suggested that the stress and pressure of fighting Hollywood's racism had literally killed him, that the constant battles and discrimination had taken a physical toll his body couldn't handle. The truth is probably less dramatic, but no less tragic. Medical experts have since suggested Lee may have had an undiagnosed condition that made him vulnerable to the combination of intense physical stress, the summer heat in Hong Kong, and the medication he took that day. Some doctors believe he may have had heat stroke that contributed to the fatal brain swelling. Others point to Lee's habit of using electric shock therapy to relax his muscles, wondering if it might have caused neurological damage over time. But whether his death was natural causes, an allergic reaction, or something more sinister, one fact remained undeniable. Bruce Lee died before Hollywood could fully steal from him again. Enter the Dragon premiered 2 weeks after his death, and as he suspected, it became a massive hit. The film grossed over $200 million worldwide on a budget of $850,000, proving once and for all that audiences would absolutely accept an Asian lead actor in a major action film. The success of Enter the Dragon should have opened doors for other Asian actors, but it didn't. Hollywood executives looked at the film's numbers and decided Lee was a unique phenomenon, a once-in-a-generation talent who couldn't be replicated. This convenient analysis meant they didn't have to change their racist casting practices. For decades after Lee's death, Asian actors continued to be relegated to sidekick roles, villains, or stereotypes. The industry learned nothing from his success because learning would have required admitting their mistakes. Instead, Hollywood spent the next 50 years profiting from Lee's image and legacy while offering Asian actors scraps. Studios released cheap knockoffs trying to find the next Bruce Lee. They cast his son Brandon in similar roles, then failed to protect him on set, leading to Brandon's death in 1993 during the filming of The Crow. The Lee family tragedy became complete, both father and son killed while trying to break through barriers that shouldn't have existed. The evidence of Hollywood's betrayal is everywhere when you look closely. Scripts Lee developed appeared years later, with his name stripped from the credits and white actors in the roles he created. Fight choreography techniques he pioneered became standard in action films, with no acknowledgement of his innovations. Movies about Asian characters continued going to white actors through yellow face makeup well into the 1990s and 2000s. The industry that claimed to honor Bruce Lee after his death had actually learned to exploit his memory while perpetuating the same racism that drove him away. It wasn't until the 2000s that Asian actors began to see the opportunities Lee had fought for. Films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon proved what Lee knew in the 1970s, that audiences worldwide would embrace authentic Asian stories and performers. The success of actors like Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and more recently Simu Liu in Shang-Chi finally delivered on the promise that Lee's career should have fulfilled decades earlier. In 2019, Quentin Tarantino released Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which included a controversial scene depicting Bruce Lee as an arrogant blowhard who gets beaten by a white stuntman. Lee's daughter, Shannon, responded with fury, calling the scene white Hollywood's racist fantasy about what they could do to Bruce Lee. Tarantino defended the scene, claiming it was based on a real confrontation, but this missed the point entirely. Even decades after his death, Hollywood still couldn't resist diminishing Bruce Lee to make white actors look better. The full story of what happened to Bruce Lee isn't just about one man's career being derailed by racism. It's about a system that recognized extraordinary talent, profited from that talent, but refused to give the person behind it the respect and opportunities he deserved. Lee's story is a reminder that even when barriers appear to break, the people in power often find new ways to maintain control. Today, Bruce Lee remains a global icon, but his legacy is complicated. He proved that Asian actors could be leading men, that martial arts could be art, and that audiences would embrace authentic stories from different cultures. But he also showed how much sacrifice it takes to break through racist barriers, and how the system will fight to maintain those barriers even when they make no economic or creative sense. The Hollywood executives who rejected Lee never admitted they were wrong. Most of them are dead now, having lived full lives and enjoyed successful careers built partly on stealing from the man they refused to hire. The racism they practiced became the blueprint for how the industry continues to treat Asian talent, using excuses about marketability and relatability to justify discrimination. Bruce Lee died believing that Enter the Dragon would change everything. In some ways it did, but not nearly as much as it should have. His death robbed the world of seeing what he could have accomplished with more time, more films, and the creative freedom he deserved from the beginning. We're left wondering what else he could have created if Hollywood hadn't spent years destroying his opportunities before finally, grudgingly, giving him one chance. The story of how Hollywood destroyed Bruce Lee isn't just history. It's a pattern that continues in different forms today, reminding us that breaking down barriers isn't enough. The system has to actually change, and the people in power have to be held accountable for the opportunities they denied and the talent they wasted. Bruce Lee deserved better than he got, and the fact that we're still having these conversations 50 years after his death proves that Hollywood still hasn't learned its lesson. Despite everything Hollywood put him through, Bruce Lee's legacy refuses to die. His fight against racism in the industry paved the way for every Asian actor who came after him. But the question remains. If Hollywood hadn't destroyed his opportunities for so many years, what more could he have accomplished? What do you think? Was Bruce Lee's death truly an accident, or did the pressure from fighting Hollywood's racism play a bigger role than anyone wants to admit? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story eye-opening, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the dark side of Hollywood. And while you're here, check out the video on your screen right now. You won't want to miss it.